Hello, and welcome to today's event, Emerging Technologies, Putting MSD Solutions into Practice. My name is Lisa Brooks. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve the National Safety Council as the North American HSE Networks Director within the Workplace Practice Group. I want to express a big thank you to everyone in our audience for your leadership in implementing the latest safety solutions to champion MSD prevention in your own workplaces. I also want to welcome those joining from our partners at the HR Certification Institute. HRCI members can receive 1 professional development credit for attending today's session, and we'll share that code at the end of the hour. Now, in a few moments, you will hear from my colleague, Sarah Isher, who will offer insights on new and emerging technologies in MSD Solutions, as well as the Work to Zero pilot and implementation roadmap. Then we'll bring you a moderated conversation to hear from experts on how they have used new and emerging technologies to address musculoskeletal disorders in the workplace. These experts will share their experiences with overcoming challenges in deployment and adoption and how they have centered on the needs of the workforce when implementing a new technology. We welcome questions from the audience, and we will do our best to get to all of them. If you have a question, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Finally, we will wrap up promptly at 2 p.m. Eastern with a review of new resources and a preview of upcoming events. Now, I want to share a bit about the National Safety Council's MSD Solutions Lab. It is a first-of-its-kind strategic initiative funded by Amazon to reduce workplace musculoskeletal disorders and injuries by engaging stakeholders, conducting research, identifying solutions, and scaling the results so that workplaces can benefit, so that all workplaces can benefit. So one of our key initiatives is the MSD Pledge, a global movement of employers across industries to transform workplace safety and reduce the risks of musculoskeletal disorders, the most common workplace injury. Now, we invite you to join other leading companies in becoming part of the MSD Pledge community. Now, by signing the pledge, organizations commit to analyze the causes of MSD injuries and invest in solutions and practices that reduce risks to workers, leverage best practices and share learnings to improve safety practices, build a culture of safety where everyone at every level is accountable for safety and health, and of course, our ultimate goal, reduce MSD risk and resulting injuries collectively by 25% by 2025. Together, we are creating safer outcomes for millions of workers worldwide. Now, since June of 2022, our community has grown to over 150 MSD Pledge member companies who employ more than 2.4 million people across diverse industries. Signing the pledge is completely free, and organizations who take that step gain access to a wealth of resources to advance their safety programs. Visit nsc.org/MSD Pledge to learn more and join us in this important work. Now, before I pass the mic to Sarah, I want to get a better sense of where you and your companies are in adopting new technologies. Now, you should see a poll question appear on your screen now. Now, it reads, which stage best describes your company's adoption of emerging technologies? Are you unfamiliar with emerging technologies? Are you just investigating the possibility of emerging and using emerging technologies? Are you preparing now to implement an emerging technology? Or have you recently implemented an emerging technology? Or are you using many emerging technologies? Or are you actually using many technologies and some of them to address musculoskeletal disorders? We appreciate you answering the question and taking the poll. This will actually help guide our conversation today. Excellent. Excellent. Now, I am so pleased to welcome Sarah Isher, an expert who holds many titles. Sarah is our Senior Program Manager of the MSD Solutions Lab at the National Safety Council. She is an EHS professional with industrial hygiene and ergonomics experience in complex manufacturing facilities and specializes in the use of risk assessments, engineering controls, and innovative technology solutions to improve workplaces. Welcome, Sarah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate the warm welcome and am excited to participate in my first town hall since I've stepped in to help lead the Solutions Lab team. Since you all are tuning in, I hope that you're as excited as I am about the future of health and safety. As you'll hear more about this later in the session, there are promising technologies available today that can solve for some of our workplace's top risks. But technology is not just a magic wand. There are necessary steps needed to take to implement these innovative tools, and that's what I plan to share with you today. Next slide, please. To start this off, as I'm sure you're aware, digital transformation is here to stay. We've made our way to this new landscape that follows tech advancements from the steam engines and early uses of computers. Today, Industry 4.0 and beyond emphasizes advances in communication and connectivity, which can be considered functions of a variety of technologies, including robotics, artificial intelligence, wearable monitors, and more. Since the world around us, especially the tech world, is not slowing down, we wanted to ask the questions. How can we overcome barriers to innovation and use technology to improve work and save lives? And is there a process employers can use to make innovation more accessible? Next slide. So here's what we found. Learning agility is key. Many of these barriers are human-centered. In fact, survey research found the most perceived barriers for adopting and implementing safety technologies include limited number of use cases and examples of successes with technology, a resistant workforce, limited knowledge of what technology is available. So as it turns out, digital transformation is not only about technology. What truly leads to success and gives companies a competitive edge relates to the human side of the organization. But as we have seen in many discussions focused on tech, people are often missing from the equation. Focusing on your workforce is a key factor in a company's innovation journey. In order for humans to interact effectively with the chosen technology, it is important to create an attitude of curiosity and develop the mental agility necessary to respond to these rapid advancements. Mindful organizations invest in this among both leaders and the workforce. Next slide. When gearing up to innovate, it is critical to reflect on your organization and understand where you are. We like to highlight three main topics: the mindset, skill set, and tool set. So what's that mean? Mindset refers to this human-centered vision and getting those interested in technology to understand how it can protect our people. Skill set includes the key knowledge needed for innovation. Examples include ensuring IT skills and ensuring we have IT skills and staff with the ability to select tech. Tool sets include the key structural items needed to implement emerging tech, like network capabilities and data capturing. Launching a pilot is an excellent way to learn, make corrections on a small scale, and reduce investment risk. In this case, gathering a small group of independent, capable, and flexible team members to incubate technology and work out issues is ideal. These individuals can be considered digital champions, and they can be selected from this team to act as communicators for the broader rollout. These early efforts are key to assure alignment of a company's mindset, skill set, and tool set. Next slide. So based on these learnings, we've created a roadmap, which I'll show later. In this initial stage, it is important to determine the business goals for implementing technology. The backbone of digital transformation is well-articulated values. Business managers often want to use technology for its ability to provide growth and improve quality. Yet, unlike the adoption of personal digital devices like these, where the decision maker, buyer, and user are the same person, adoption of technology for business purposes affects completely different groups. If the reasons behind the decision to adopt a specific tech are not understood or valued by the eventual users, there is sure to be trouble, believe me. In applying management of change principles to assess the business impact, it is important to communicate the collective why this new technology is needed, evaluate how the technology impacts different groups, identify what sources are needed, and understand any potential issues. Next slide. One of the most important steps in the preparation stage to implement safety technology involves engaging a group of digital champions representing all levels of the organization. Often it's a challenge for organizations to identify the needed skill set, to find the right fit, and quickly determine additional training is needed. Once again, more and more learning agility is key. When a company embarks on digital change, a coalition approach can enable open lines of communication through champions who already do the specific type of work that you could be changing. The following questions can be used when forming this innovation coalition. How will our needs evolve? How will the technology evolve? Who is affected by the technology? And what may need immediate attention and problem solving? Next slide. Revisiting organizational readiness and gathering additional perceptions about the company's capabilities to innovate can provide value to ensure a focus on the human mindset and understand how innovation will affect individuals. In this stage, it is also important to determine the anticipated data structure and reporting alignment. Questions to ask are, what data are actually needed? How is that captured? And what's the process and what will the output be used for? This step in the preparation stage relies on engaging the right individuals. Often, this requires involving personnel with key tool sets, such as IT professionals. The involvement of a broad group creates a shared sense of responsibility and engages employees in helping others work safely. Next slide. The next phase is evaluating, which will be one of the focuses in the panel following my presentation. It's important to explore possible technology solutions, compare existing or emerging technology, and ensure that the solution actually solves for the hazard you are trying to eliminate. We have resources available to help you with this, and Lisa's going to talk more about them later. One of the things we hear the most is, don't go out and buy something because it's pretty and shiny. Ensure that your investments are deliberate and can be used to create a healthier workplace. To do this, you may need to evaluate evidence of a tech's proof of concept, but maybe you're not a tech expert, or maybe you're not a safety expert in this specific discipline. It is important to look for case studies or use cases from others in similar industries, or from the tech vendors themselves. Also, ensure that the solution is fit for your purpose. Not only can it reduce the risk, but also fit the guidelines of your specific facility without creating new hazards. Additionally, although I wish it wasn't the case, you need to be able to make the business case. Sometimes a safer workplace isn't enough. You need to prove that not only will the solution help workers, but also save money. And NSC actually has safety investment calculators to help you determine the ROI and compare the price of business as usual versus tech adoption. Next slide. Prior to rolling out the tech solution, it is critical to revisit and engage affected groups. This includes assessing their acceptance and willingness to use the technology, their skill and problem-solving ability, and their cultural appetite for change. Continuously assessing the impact of the change on frontline workers will give leaders the opportunity to provide support and ensure a sense of shared responsibility and collective purpose. Next slide. Launching a pilot project is an excellent way to learn, make corrections on a small scale, and reduce investment risk. In this case, gathering those innovators in your organization and implementing a tech solution on one production line or at one facility can help you understand or work out any issues. Plus, as others see that you are including the actual employees that complete the hazardous tasks, you can gain trust from the workforce. In this stage of innovation, it is important to evaluate data integrity and ensure that the technology is solving your issue or tracking towards your goals. As a reminder, the Safety Tech Roadmap is based on a continuous improvement framework. Conducting regular assessments of the technology and data is key to the success of innovation, and in this case, reducing risk of musculoskeletal disorders. Pledging to continuous improvement and monitoring allows you to show a greater sense of commitment across all aspects of the organization. Next slide. If you're interested in learning more about this roadmap, please visit the link in the chat. Work to Zero has the infographic and white paper available to help you through the process I have reviewed. The Safety Technology Roadmap is a framework for guidance and can be used for any of the emerging technologies we will discuss later. It is important to note that depending on your individual situation, you may use the roadmap at a different starting point. And based on how things go, you may need to revisit prior steps. Implementing safety technology is not a linear process. In fact, Effective efforts toward continuous improvement require an open and learning-centered process. I would like to thank you for your commitment to workplace safety and wish you the best of luck as you put these technology solutions into practice. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into the future of technologies to address musculoskeletal disorders. And in some cases, it looks like the future is now. So that was wonderful. Now I want to welcome Malcolm Glenn, a senior advisor with our partners at Meteorite, to lead our panel discussion. Over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Always a pleasure to share the virtual stage with you. And thank you to everyone for joining us today for this conversation. I'm really excited to lead the next portion of our discussion, where we're going to really engage in a conversation about some innovative solutions for reducing MSDs in the workplace to ensure the safety of workers. But before we get into that, as Lisa said, my name is Malcolm Glenn, and I am a senior advisor to the team at Meteorite. And I'm also the founder and CEO of MG Equity Consulting, which is a firm that helps organizations really embed principles of equity in everything they do, inside and out. And I am so pleased to welcome the following speakers into the next portion of our conversation. All three of these folks, who you can see on screen, they're experts in their fields, and they have decades of experience in ergonomics, from exoskeletons all the way to artificial intelligence. So I'll introduce each of them, then we'll jump right into the conversation. And just a reminder, before I tell you a little bit more about each of these folks, we welcome people to submit their questions via that Q&A function. And folks on this call will do their very best to answer as many of them as possible before the hour ends. Okay, enough preamble. So we are joined today by Dr. Mark Binden, who is a professor and director of the Ergonomics Center at Texas A&M University. Dr. Binden's career includes experience as an officer, an innovator, a rehabilitation engineer, an ergonomics consultant, a plant and corporate ergonomics engineer, and an executive vice president. We are also joined today by David Brody, who is an ergonomist lead for North America at Cargill. And in this role, David oversees the implementation of programs, processes, solutions, and technologies all across the region. And last but certainly not least, we are joined by Carrie Merck, who is the Director of Connected Technologies R&D for Ansell Interfols. Carrie has more than 15 years experience in engineering and technology, having started her career as a process engineer and workplace ergonomics assessments team lead before joining Ansell Healthcare in 2012 in research and development. Mark, David, Carrie, I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for contributing to what I suspect is going to be a very, very insightful conversation. Okay, well, with that, let's just jump into the discussion. Maybe I can start with you, Mark. So you have, as I mentioned, an extensive history of research in using technology to solve ergonomic challenges. So maybe you can start by sharing a little bit about your observations on how the use of technology in MSD prevention has evolved over the past few decades.
Yeah, that's great, Malcolm. Thank you for that. I guess the easiest place to start, really, since we're talking about MSDs for people, is with the human. The human, the last 30 to 40 years has changed. And so, we think of ourselves often going out into industry, working with employees, and we're going to try to help them, avoid injury and illness and reduce risk. But one of the challenges we faced the last few decades is that the human form, we've changed. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've become more diseased. We have more of the comorbidities that lead to or encourage or are correlated with MSDs. We have a bigger waistline, unfortunately. So our anthropometry has changed, trying to fit things to people, tools and equipment and PPE. Even our vision, our sense of smell, our body temperature have all dropped. Our grip strength, particularly amongst young men, our testosterone in young males has also dropped, which is something that helps us to prevent injury and illness in those young men. We toss in some other interesting ingredients around, unfortunately, depression and anxiety and stress levels we've never seen in history before. And we have a new employee base that we're trying to help avoid MSDs, and it is a real challenge. So I tell my students often, if you want a challenge, right? This moving target of the human, you got it. This is tough. This is tough stuff. Now, on the good side of technology, we have gained the ability through better diagnostics, better imaging. We have better medical surveillance and screening, and we're doing more on that side of things, particularly because of technology. 40 years ago, you could ask 3 physicians to see a patient who was having some problems with something that might be an MSD. And you would get one who would say they have it, another one who says they don't, and a third who says they have something completely different. We've really tightened that and narrowed that through a lot of the improvements in diagnostics. One of the other big things we've done with tech now is that we have switched from mostly analog, and a lot of things it had to be in a laboratory, right? It was very stationary, to now we've got portable, we've got digital, we've got wearable. So we're collecting data on risk in the plant with factory workers in real time and 24/7, not just back in the day, we were really only able to do a sample. So we would go out for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, maybe a couple days, and we would call that the life experience of the employee. And often we missed vast amounts of risk that potentially were even the things that were really causing the MSDs. So we've gotten a lot better at that. We can analyze video on our smartphone now from the employees and the risk. And I think finding those real-time issues today and enabling, this is kind of the next big step for us today with technology, is enabling the workers in real time to change those behaviors themselves without having to send a professional out necessarily, on a daily basis. So lots of big changes, lots of big evolution, and we have really seen many improvements. And so I'm excited about the potential for technology to offer even more improvements moving forward. So.
Thank you for that answer, Mark. And I love that framing, right? This idea that the use of technology to prevent MSDs, it's changed because people, or as you said it, the human has changed. And I think it kind of just sort of really kind of brings home this point that technological innovation doesn't exist in a vacuum. In fact, what we do is responsive to the people that we're trying to serve. And the more we look at how people are changing, the more we can come up with innovations that are going to better serve them. I really love that point, and thank you for sharing. David, maybe we can turn to you next. So I know that Cargill has done a lot of work on really kind of being innovative as a company. So with that in mind, while early adoption can give companies a competitive advantage, sort of competitive industry edge, those who are first to test new technology can also take on the challenge of sort of uncertain outcomes. So there's a risk-reward calculation at play for every company determining how much they're going to kind of jump into the fray ahead of others. So can you tell us, from your perspective, what risks are involved with trying a new technology, and how has Cargill been vigilant to address those?
Yeah, I think when I'm looking at technology, I think one of the things that's very helpful from an ergonomics perspective is that there's a lot of challenges we've been dealing with over the last few years, and where we might have hit walls on how can we find what's truly the problem, how do we develop solutions that are effective, and how do we solve some of these issues without someone basically creating a new technology that could take away that risk. So we've seen a lot of growth over the last few years that's really helping us drive down that risk. The reality is everybody has to be bold. Everybody has to be trying to go down this path. And there are risks to it. The fact is, a lot of the technologies that we're seeing advertised out there, they're relatively new. They've only been around a couple of years, and we really don't have really broad use cases of what value do they bring to us. You're buying into a system without knowing for sure it's going to give you a major impact. So you're taking that risk up front. But again, and I think Sarah did a good job when she was talking about the implementation process, that whole flow chart there is, you don't go all in on anything. Like, so if you're careful, you can manage your risk. If you focus it where you can control it and control your implementation, it works. You can really manage what that risk might be. Some of the other risks, just to kind of quickly go through, we really have to be careful about the privacy of our employees. And I think one of the risks that basically measuring more things, putting wearables on people, having something on someone that period of time, we have to be very careful about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what you're doing with that data, and being very open and have the conversations with their employees about what are we trying to achieve with this, and making sure that we're all moving in the right direction to reduce the risk for their injuries. So it's that you have to be aware of that up front and take care of it well, or else you're going to have a lot of barriers to really implementing a technology. I think the other thing you got to realize when you're dealing with new tech, relatively new tech, is that you're going to run into problems. When it's relatively new, it's not going to be perfect if you're an early adopter. So there's a pro and a con to that. You got to be aware that there's going to be challenges. You got to make sure your plants, your people know that, hey, we're going to run into issues. We're going to get through it. So running into those issues is a challenge. But the fact that you're having influence, the fact that you can give feedback to those companies and you're actually helping grow a technology because you're an early adopter, allows you to basically help it grow in a direction that probably gives good value to your company and to your employees. So those are kind of the three of the key risks that we've really worked around. And given to what we've been able to do so far, that's kind of I would say the primary ones I focused on.
David, I love those suggestions. Frankly, I think those are things that anyone working in any industry who's working in tech should kind of take to heart. This notion that, you shouldn't go all in on anything. It's really about risk management. I love that you brought up privacy and being open and transparent about both what your goals as a company are and also what you're doing with people's data. That is a cross-industry issue that I think lots of folks in tech are not sufficiently thoughtful about. And I think your advice around early adopters is right as well. It's never going to be perfect. And if you have that understanding going in, I think you're going to be a lot better off. I love those suggestions. I think they're super, super valuable. Let's stay on this idea of new technology and navigating the uncertainty of the new technology space. So Carrie, maybe I can go to you next. We know that implementing a new technology in the workplace can certainly be exciting when you solve a problem, when you bring something to the fore that didn't exist. But that also might introduce ethical challenges and concerns. So for example, workers may worry, as David said, about privacy issues. Maybe they have concerns that the company is going to be kind of like Big Brother monitoring them at work. So as a producer of wearable sensors, Carrie, how do you help companies overcome the concerns that frontline workers might rightly have about new technology?
Absolutely, and thank you. So I think it's a critical question. It's a challenging task, but there are several ways that IntelliForce can help with our customers and be a partner in the solution on their journey. And because we are using this technology in our own factories and we're doing the agile learning curve, and because we have been in safety for over 125 years, we have this deep understanding of our customers' needs. We know what their challenges are. We're living them ourselves as we put the technologies into our own factories. And we can help them overcome these things. So a couple of areas that I would highlight, and I think David mentioned this when he was just talking a minute ago, is upfront communication. I think that's absolutely critical. And it needs to be at every level. It needs to be with people managers, the buyers, the frontline workers themselves. They need to know exactly what is being collected and what isn't. They need to know that there are regulatory bodies and compliances that protect them and their personal data. So a good partner will be compliant with those. GDPR as an example, when we're talking about Europe. You need to educate the frontline workers on the benefits and the positive outcomes of the data that is being collected and how that's going to be used to benefit them. I think that transparency is absolutely critical. And as they understand what is and isn't being collected, how that's being used for their benefit, then that can help with that big brother conversation. So one other thing I think I'd also like to highlight is engagement and creating this safe space, if you will, around testing the new technologies. So you want to involve the workers in the process of implementing. You want to put these wearable sensors, these pods, in their hands so they have something tangible that they can touch and feel, and they can see it. And you want to give them direct access to that data and the insights so they can see, again, how it's being used. And make it fun. I think if you can create a healthy competition, engage the workers in their own safety, reward them in a way that creates a team spirit and makes them a part of the solution. So those are all kind of big concepts. You had asked how us as a tech company can help with those things. So that goes back to Ansel being intimate with our customers, listening to them, and being a partner on the journey. So we don't just hand over a technology and shake your hand and send you on your way. We're a partner with you in the pilot. We listen, we modify, we tweak. We're agile in the response. We give you the resources created and customized that help you with that upfront communication. We work with you to educate your frontline workers. And we have developed some unique tools that ensure that the workers can have direct access to their data, understand what it means, see how it can be used, and how they can be a part of the solution.
Carrie, I think what's so fascinating about your answer is basically every solution you mentioned to reassure workers when it comes to new tech is a very low tech solution, right? Upfront communication, engagement with everyone in the process. These are things that every company can do. They're not especially resource intensive necessarily. And when you talked about engagement, involving workers in the process, that really resonated with me. I do a lot of work with folks in the disability community, and one of the mantras that folks will often say is nothing about us without us. And I think that really resonates here, right? If you're going to be building solutions to help a community, it's really important to engage those folks early in the process to make sure you're best meeting their needs. And it sounds like that's something that you're all doing. And it makes sense considering your long history in safety. So appreciate you sharing those really, really, I think, actionable tips. So I love this conversation. We sort of talked high level about some of the ways that institutions can approach new technologies. Now I want to get a little bit more into some of the details. So maybe David, I can go to you next. So we understand that Cargill is piloting a number of practical different technologies around industry sectors. So maybe we can get a little bit more specific. Can you describe a few of these new technologies and get into a little bit of how they're being used to solve MSDs?
So the two primary technologies we're testing right now are multi-sensor wearable technology and computer vision technology. And both are based around the idea of measuring human motion and evaluating risks related to that motion. But they both have two different aspects of where they bring value and how you would use them. So when we looked at why did we choose those technologies? Well, we had a couple of reasons. The first off is that, for the businesses we're focusing on, we have over 40 plants, over 5,000 job titles that we're actually evaluating, information that needs to be gathered on a regular basis to manage and understand and manage our risks. So the time to gather that data is very challenging. So technology, one of its key things is that does it improve the efficiency of how you can collect the data? Is it easier than spending all that time on the floor and being out there on a regular basis? Going back to Dr. Bendon said as well, is that does it give me more knowledge because now I'm not collecting a 1-minute video, now I'm collecting an hour's or more worth of information to really understand what they're exposed to. Competency is a challenge. I think Cargill is a big organization, but we don't have ergonomists in every plant. It's not viable. It's the type of industry, I think most plants don't have an ergonomist on staff. So having people who can do that type of data collection and risk analysis, we have people that are very good at it, but we also get turnover. And having to keep those people and continually train people to be good at doing this is a challenge. Technology gives you an opportunity to standardize and create a process that's a little more sustainable. And if it can work, that's what we're trying to achieve. And what that allows us to do is the technology takes away a little bit of the variability in how people look at jobs. Technology measures it the same way each time. It uses the same algorithm to calculate things. So then those decisions about what a person is doing become much more consistent. That's a huge value. Okay. The final one that we were considering, because we have not just our primary locations, but we have 40 primary locations we're focusing on. We also have another 360 around North America. We can't travel to all those places when something happens. So having a technology like computer vision, where someone at a remote location could take a video of their job, transmit it to an expert, and then you able to work with them remotely. The reality is your return on investment, you take away 10 trips and all of a sudden your technology for the year is paid for, type of thing. So there's a lot of different things that when you're trying to manage all those locations, the types of things you're trying to do, that making those selections and trying to choose it. And like I said, from our perspective, multi-sensors gave us lots of volume, lots of good data that we can put out on the floor and have people wear it and be out there in all kinds of locations around our plants. Not only tough locations to get to, but people that have to walk out in the middle of nowhere, so you don't have to walk with them. All kinds of viability there. Computer vision helped us target down to individual jobs, individual risks, and supporting remote locations a heck of a lot easier.
I love that. It sounds like for both the wearable tech and the computer vision, consistency and scale are two of the real value adds that you're seeing. Maybe just as a follow-up, as you're implementing these technologies, how do you determine which solutions are actually the most effective for folks in your workforce?
Well, part of it is you're setting up measurables ahead of time. So when we went with the wearable tech, we were measuring time. So we expected to improve efficiency, so we actually measured it. And we incorporated some students to do specific projects in our plants to actually stopwatch time. How long does it take to do it manually? How long does it take to do it with the technology? We're paying attention to every piece about how much time potential is saved. So that was one piece. We have other studies that we're engaging with universities to say, are we improving our accuracy? Are we improving that piece are we getting good data out of it, type of thing. Right now, we're digging deep into the data. So we just finished collecting, at this point, probably just over 2,000 jobs over the last 10 months. We're now digging deep into that data. So I think the next measurables we want to understand is how much does that data drive an ergonomics program and decisions we can make and really support the plants and everything we do. So measurables up front, what are you trying to achieve? And then basically making sure that data gives you value moving forward.
I love that. You can't assess what you're not measuring. So I think that's valuable advice. So Carrie, David just talked about multi-sensor wearable tech, and wearable sensors are across the industry becoming a more widely adopted technology. So can you elaborate for us a bit more on the data collection that you all do, data collection from wearable sensors, and then how do you actually turn that into ways to prevent MSDs?
Absolutely. So real quick, before I give you that, I want to talk about data for a minute, because I think the volume of the data has just grown so much in the past couple of years, and then that's part of the recipe for how you go forward with the provision. So as an example, in 2016, that's the year that the world's data reached 1 zettabyte. And by 2025, we're predicted to reach 175 zettabytes. That's a huge number. And it's really hard to imagine how much data that is. One way to picture it is with old tech DVDs. If you stored 175 zettabytes of data on DVDs and you stack them all on top of each other, that would be long enough to circle the Earth 222 times. So that's how much data is being generated with wearable sensors and other technology in the world. So coming back to how we harness that for MSD safety and prevention in wearable tech. So what we're doing with our wearable, it's a motion sensor, so IMU device, inertial measurement unit. So we use that to track motions, time through space, specifically for the hand and wrist. We take that data, we push it up to the cloud, and we then clean it, transform it through machine learning algorithms to translate into the different hand movements. So from there, we have the assessment data that is necessary to start assessing risks based off of motion physical factors. In addition to that, you can then take that data and automate the insights using, for example, the strain index, which is a common distal upper extremity assessment tool for physical factors in the workplace. You can take the data that you capture from those sensors, run it through the strain index, and target the specific risks related to motion with other sensors related to other physical risk factors, and know where you need to take action in your continual improvement journey to reduce the risk. And it is a continual improvement journey. Something else really interesting as far as the next step for the call to action is you can also use the data on the wearable device itself with on-edge processing and haptic feedback or other communication modalities to actually help you drive the human behavioral change and change the way people work. So one example there is you can use a haptic buzz to be a gentle reminder to work in best practices, neutral postures, kind of how, for example, a Fitbit might remind you to get up and take a walk after a certain amount of time being stationary at your desk. You could also use these haptics to aid in compliance with, for example, personalized micro stretch breaks. And again, this can be personalized. It can be to the person in their job task in the day versus the old way or the manual way of looking at just a subset of a cohort of the job tasks and applying fixes across the entire body. This can all be personalized. So I think it's something that's super interesting, super exciting. And as David had said previously, it helps with faster, higher accuracy insights, but also can help with the intervention aids as well.
It's really fascinating tech, and I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about it. I also appreciate you sharing a bit of context around the scale of that data. I wasn't even familiar with the term zettabytes, which I just looked up is 1 billion terabytes. So we're talking a major scale, as you depicted in that very useful analogy. Maybe just a follow-up question. So there's the ways in which you're being really thoughtful around this technology, both for Ansel and then also externally as well. So how have you worked with your clients to better adopt this technology to the specific needs of their workforce?
So for the specific needs of their workforce, we typically go in and partner with them in the pilot programs. So this is, again, you want to have this conversation of what your work history is, where you think your pain points are, and how this technology might apply. And again, our technology is specifically to hand and wrist, so that's part of the conversation as well, understanding whether or not this technology is the right solution for what your needs are. From there, we do a structured pilot study, start off with collecting baseline data to understand what your risk is today. And then from there, we are your partner in the communication of what the risk is, what workplace best practices could help with your journey, in addition to how the technology could also help with the interventions. So, and that's dependent on, again, what your dominant risk factor is and how you want to go forward in this continual improvement process.
Love that. Super helpful. Maybe Mark, I can go to you next. So we've talked about a ton of different technologies, as you just heard about from Carrie and David, but we haven't talked about a very new technology that's making some waves in the field of ergonomics, this idea of digital humans or digital twins. So can you just tell us a little bit more about how this technology works and how it's being used in MSD prevention?
Sure. The big change, I think, probably isn't so much on the digital twin side as it is on the digital human side. So the digital twin side, you could take a car engine, you could put that into a three-dimensional program that allows you to use three-dimensional objects and manipulate them. So you can spin it, rotate it, you could insert it into the body of a car. Next, you could take a avatar, if you will, a human form. Let's pick something anthropometrically, a 50th percentile female from Korea. So we would use that anthropometry for that person, put her into that vehicle, and we'd see, hey, can she reach the radio controls while she's leaning back in the seat? Can she drive with a steering wheel? We can do all of that with her digital twin and the digital twins of the vehicle and the seat and the steering wheel without ever having to build any of those things, right? So that concept has been around for quite a few years. We're getting way better at it. We process that data way faster. There's many more pieces of software out there. And just to encourage all of you, it's so easy that I can use it. It is definitely something that is available to more folks for a much lower price. I mean, some of these things when they first came out, it was $100,000 for a seat, a license for one person to use that. And, now they're under $1,000, and there's a lot of free ones that probably far exceed definitely my capabilities that you can use to do this type of work. The digital human side is a little different. That's really taking an avatar in the simplest of terms and creating that person that you want to use in your business, in your company. We've used this quite a bit as trainers. So one of the big needs right now, it turns out, is remote worker training, right? They're way away from everybody else, way away from corporate, and they need to be trained still, but probably not going to send one of my ergonomists to their house to hang out and have coffee with them one morning and do a one-on-one training. There's many reasons why we wouldn't want to do that. Cost obviously is one of the biggest. But what we can do with this digital human is we can create a person, and I do literally mean create them, their hair color, their facial expressions. We actually program their personalities. So are they perky and happy and smiling and, always chipper? Or are they kind of neutral, or are they gruff and rough? It really depends on the audience and who you're going to be training or who you're going to be interacting with as to how you do this. The great thing about these digital humans that's a very recent improvement is that now they are empathetic listeners. So not only are they giving you information potentially that you've taught the digital human to give, they're listening to your answers very carefully. They're watching your facial expressions, and they're empathetically engaging with you much more like a human. Now, we've learned, we kind of have to stay away from, it's called the uncanny valley. We don't want to get too deep down in that, and it gets a little creepy and weird and kind of like, oh, this thing on my screen looks strange, right? So we have to be careful how we do this, but the basic process is to take some natural language programming tools, teach your digital human how to be able to respond to certain answers, and then how to give certain information. Like, for instance, they could give a quiz to your employees after they take a training, and that could be an oral quiz. You could still have them interact with the keyboard or the touch screen. So lots of potential. Again, most recently, we've used this at Nokia. They've got about 7,000 remote workers just here in Texas to do some training with them, but we're also doing it with occupational health nurses for screenings. So imagine someone who's got a little bit of an issue that they've had. Maybe it's been an accident, maybe they're embarrassed. It might be, and we're starting to find evidence of this, it might be easier to talk to a digital human rather than a real human and admit a wrong or confess some, information. We all probably understand this when we go to the physician and she says, hey, how many drinks do you have a week? And we look down and we say, what's the right answer? One? That's probably not the truthful answer, right? But we're searching because she's looking at us and talking to us. We kind of want to get that right answer for her, not the truthful answer. So we think digital humans may be able to break down some of that barrier of interviewing, screening, discussing, post-accident follow-ups and investigations. They may be useful for all these types of things.
I think those are all super fascinating use cases. And in fact, I wish we could dig a little bit deeper into some of those technologies, because I suspect we could have a really interesting conversation around the implementation. Thank you for that answer, Mark. I want to ask one final question of each of you. I know we're kind of running up against time, and there are a couple more things we want to share with folks before we close out. So I'm just going to ask one final question to each of you. And I'll also ask that maybe you keep your answers relatively short, just to make sure that we can get out on time. So Carrie, I'll start with you. We've talked about a bunch of technologies, but Ansel also uses wearable sensor gloves to protect folks in the Ansel workforce. So what lessons have you learned from your own workforce that have helped you improve on this technology in particular?
So many lessons, but you said keep it short, so I'll try to do that. So one, we get the same benefits that our customers will, right? And that's been a lesson for us as far as continuing to open our own eyes to the importance of MSD safety in the workplace. It's just the tip of the iceberg, what we're doing right now. That feeds also into ways that we learn how to improve our product and service, not just for our own benefit, but for our customers as well. So it's this agile learning process of new technologies, new ideas coming up against the reality of the workforce and organizational change and the complexities of MSDs. So super interesting there. We also learn how to be a better partner for our customers. And this gets back into the challenges of emerging technologies, implementing those, organizational change, the human factors of resistance to change and to Big Brother. So we learn how to be successful in these implementations internally, and then we can help our customers as a partner do the same as well.
Love that. Thank you, Carrie. David, Cargill is frankly pretty unique in the scale and the degree of focus on all of these risk factors and solving for MSDs. So what's your advice for smaller companies perhaps with fewer resources, on how to use technologies to efficiently manage identifying and addressing some of these challenges?
I think, the reality is we're a large organization, but we're made up of all small locations. So that's part of how we look at it, is that I do have big locations that have 2,000 to 3,000 employees. The risk there drives decisions on what technology you might use, and you have more capacity to do that. When you get into your smaller plants, the question is, do you need all that? Do you need that level of data? You have to be smart to say, do I need to measure everything my people are doing? Or do I realistically have 5 jobs where there's key risks? And do I just need to know the risks from those? And the scalability of the different technology, I don't need to measure everybody all day when I've got 5 bad jobs, right? Now, computer vision, that type of technology is a perfect opportunity to automate some processes, take away some competency needs you might need. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know all the tools perfectly. You can have people that can work with you. So some technology is there to do short bursts and do some work that you may not have the competency or the time for. You got higher risk, the bigger you are, the more you might be looking towards wearables and things that you need to measure more. So there's reasons to choose those. And you have to, I think, honestly, using that pathway that Sarah presented at the beginning of this is a perfect way for any organization to think about it. And that pathway is scalable to whatever size organization you are. Use that to ask the right questions and determine whether or not you even want to use it.
Very, very useful advice. Thank you. Mark, last question for you. What's one technology that you see on the horizon that companies should look out for when it comes to MSD prevention?
Well, we certainly are seeing a large amount of exoskeletons being tested. We're actually seeing some standards coming out now around that, which is good. I do believe that the co-robots will actually displace the use of exoskeletons very quickly. The main reason for that, and to answer your bigger technology question, is that AI and quantum computing will be the really big breakthroughs. If you could go out 500 years from now and draw a timeline from about 50 years ago when computers really started, coming out and being useful, if you could take that from that as like the point zero and go out 500 years, everything that's happened the last 50 years won't be mentioned on the timeline. It won't have a verbal anchor, right? There'll be computers invented. That'll be the zero verbal anchor point. And then the next thing will be general AI. That'll be the next point. And everything that comes after that is going to be because of that. And it'll be made possible even better with quantum computing. So I think that to answer your question, we will see dramatic changes. It's a little scary, right? We're all a little nervous about this. I get it. So people mentioned Big Brother, and I would say Terminator, but we're probably going to see 75 to 90 million jobs created in the next 10 years as a direct result of AI and quantum computing. And so some of those worries, I hope, will be, just us being nervous. But I do believe it's going to grow dramatically, and I don't think anything else that we've seen, including the internet, search engines, that kind of stuff, will be able to compare to what's coming the next few decades. So get ready. It's going to be exciting, and it's going to have tremendous impacts on workers, and the way we work.
I love that. I love the optimism around the fact that we're at the beginning of this process, and it's going to be helpful more than it's going to hurt us. Thank you all for sharing your perspectives around all of the amazing work that you all do. I really, really appreciate your thoughts and insights. We're just a couple of minutes away from the close of today's conversation. Before we close, though, we want to hear from all of you about MSD solutions at your company. So we're going to put up a couple of poll questions. This first one: which stage best describes your company's MSD solutions plan? So you can see the answers. We don't have an MSD solutions plan in place. We're learning about how we can get started. We're preparing to implement a solutions plan. We have some systems in place. We have a robust plan in place. Give us your thoughts as to where you are in that process. And then the second question: what MSD prevention technologies would you consider using for your workplace after today's event? Exoskeletons, cobots, wearable sensors, computer vision, extended reality, digital humans and digital twins, or maybe even something we haven't discussed. So I'll give folks maybe another 30 seconds or so to answer these questions, and then we'll give you a few more things before we close out. Looks like we have about half of folks have implemented their answers. So we'll give it a few more seconds for everyone to get their responses in. Okay. And I think we can share back the results so you can take a look, just to give you a sense of where you all are. It looks like the plurality of you have some systems in place when it comes to preventing MSD injuries, but there are a lot of you that are still learning how you can get started. So I hope you found today's conversation helpful. And then in terms of the technologies you're considering, wearable sensors, unsurprisingly, because of how much we talked about them today, that seems to be the one that's most prominently on your mind, as well as things like computer vision and cobots and even exoskeletons to a smaller degree. Wonderful. Thank you all for letting us know. It's always useful to understand where you are in your own MSD prevention journey. Before we close, I'm just going to pass the mic back to Lisa, who's going to share a little bit more about some new MSD Pledge member resources and give you an opportunity to pre-register for some upcoming events. Thank you all again for joining, and Lisa, over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Malcolm. And thank you all for Mark, David, Carrie, for that engaging and informative panel. That was fantastic. So I am excited to share that we've just released a resource available to all of you. It's an infographic series outlining 5 innovations in musculoskeletal disorder prevention. Now, the infographics highlight new and emerging technologies that are transforming how organizations assess and prevent musculoskeletal disorders. Now, each infographic shares interesting facts about the technology, brings attention to possible limitations, and offers pro tips to improve deployment and the worker's experience when using the technology. Now, you can find these new infographics and more at nsc.org/MSD under our resources tab. We've also put that link here in the chat. So in addition to our online resources, we have some upcoming events that you are invited to attend. So if you're new to the MSD Pledge community and want to learn more about how you can take advantage of our free tools and training, and to network with other organizations who have taken the pledge, join us for our next virtual new member orientation on Thursday, April 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, June marks the 1-year anniversary of the MSD Pledge, and we will be celebrating the accomplishments of our pledge members and sharing our vision for the MSD Pledge in year 2 at our virtual summit on June 15th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can pre-register for any of these upcoming events by completing the poll on your screen. And we look forward to seeing you at these and other upcoming events. We also have a few reminders. For those of you who are part of the MSD Pledge community, the index is due March 17th, which is a week from tomorrow. That's actually an extension from the originally published date of the 10th, which is tomorrow. So you have until the 17th. As a quick reminder, the index is designed to assess your alignment to the pledge and to track the pledge community's collective progress toward reducing MSD risks and subsequent injuries by 25% by 2025. So additionally, there are traditional and pilot grants that will be released at the end of March. So keep a lookout for announcements about these grants. Finally, HRCI members can receive 1 certification credit for attending today's session. Just use the code 622231. That's 622231, which is on the screen right now. And we'll also share it with you in the chat. As we wrap up today's session, I'd like to encourage you to once again visit nsc.org/MSD to learn more about the MSD Solutions Lab, and to visit nsc.org/MSD Pledge to learn more about and to even sign the pledge. And of course, please take advantage of all of our free tools and resources. Together, we can improve workplace safety, reduce MSD risks, and enhance the well-being of workers around the world.